as you've just heard, this session is being recorded, but it is just my face and audio and a transcript thing. So if you want to change your names or anything, please feel free, but it won't be included in the video. For those of you who've not been to one of these before, my name is Jo Southall. I am an independent occupational therapist, and I specialise in coping strategies and adapting things for chronic conditions, particularly things like hypermobility disorders. I do also live with hypermobile EDS, POTS, and a small assortment of other conditions. Um, this session is basically open to whatever you want it to be, which sounds very mystical when I say it like that. But basically, just anything you want to know, stick it in the chat, and I'm happy to answer. Um, if you've not done this before, if you're on your laptop, the chat should be below. So you just click on there and you can send messages directly into the chat or to me directly if you prefer. Other than that, if you have any technical issues, just leave and come back from the same link, and somebody, presumably my glamorous link fairy assistant, will let you back in from the lobby. And you can watch again on catch up when the recording's live if you miss anything. So I hope that's all right. Send me some questions, give me some topics, and we will get started. I do have one pre-asked question, and that was on where to find a good soft collar neck brace in black, because it is difficult to know quality and stuff online. Generally, for anything orthotics, splints, and braces related, I would recommend going via NHS Orthotics. Um, there are a couple of reasons for this. The first one is that I don't know who decides the sizing charts for these things, but there's absolutely no uniform consistency whatsoever. It's chaos. So getting the right fit is particularly important if it's anywhere like that affects your ability to breathe and for your blood to circulate, that kind of thing. So for neck bracing in any way, shape, or form, I would always recommend seeing an orthotist and getting it fitted. The second reason I recommend that is that good quality orthotics are expensive. Um, and the NHS is very much there for a reason, and I would encourage you to make the NHS do its job and provide you with healthcare. If you've got stuff via orthotics and you need a replacement for said stuff, you can just get a new referral and they will replace like for like, and it costs you nothing. Um, if the waiting list is horrendous, or that's not an option, or you're outside of the UK and you don't have an NHS to go to, then what I would consider doing is actually looking at your existing collar and seeing if you can find the brand. Because if it worked last time, it's probably going to work this time. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think there was something in the question about the Velcro going. So if it is like a Velcro issue, find somebody to sew it back on for you, seamstress, anything like that, just a friend who's handy, or if you sew yourself, great. Um, we're actually just talking about how Velcro gets like accumulates a lot of fluff and stuff sometimes. So you can use tiny crochet hooks to clean out Velcro just to give it its stick back if that's the issue. Or there's a device called a picket, which is designed for basically long hair in like Hoover rollers. But it also works for things like Velcro. So, particularly if you have long hair or you wear a lot of woolly jumpers or you work in textile crafts of any kind and you accumulate fluff with every step you take, I would fully recommend one of those. And it's great for getting fluff out of like Velcro, that kind of thing. Tiny crochet hook does the job just as well. So I hope that's sort of helpful. In terms of quality, places to buy, generally speaking, I would avoid anywhere that just does like a seller of all things who happens to sell splints and braces. What I would do is go specifically for places that sell orthotics as a business, because the quality that you're going to be able to get there and the variety will be a lot higher. So First Aid for Sport, I think, is a good one. What's the one? Vivo Med and the Health and Care uh, .co.uk, I think are good ones. Link Fairy, I'm hoping you can whiz up some links for me. I'm just going to drop them in the chat. First Aid for Sport. Uh, what did I just say? Vivo Med and oh my gosh, my brain is mush already. Bear with me. It will come back to me in a second. Health and care. So those are all kind of pretty good places. If you get something and you're not happy with it, don't wear it, send it back. It's going to be dangerous. The most important thing with all orthotics is the fit. There will be plenty of products that are fantastic, but if they don't fit your anatomy, they will be absolutely useless for you as an individual. This is the reason why typically orthotics is a better option because it does they'll be able to find something that fits your measurements and they have the skills and the ability to measure very accurately. Whereas trying to measure bits of your own anatomy is sometimes a little bit awkward. But I hope that is at least vaguely helpful. Um, I don't think I've had any questions come through yet. So what I'm going to do is ramble a little bit about splints and braces. Um, oh, there we go. I'll have a question in a second. So, um, in terms of splints and braces, what I would typically recommend is activity splinting. So there's a lot of discussion among healthcare professionals, most of which is not overly positive, about the fact that using splints and braces excessively can cause deconditioning. So the idea that's become prevalent is that the minute you put a knee brace on, you will immediately lose entirety of your thigh muscle, your calves will waste away, you will become weak and feeble and fall over all the time. Um, the reality is a little bit different. Essentially, the more work the splint does for you, the more likely you are to key condition. However, if you are not doing an activity because you can't do it safely, that's also going to cause deconditioning. So my personal approach is to rather than looking at like body parts. So I have very hypermobile wrists. My wrists are really, really unstable. But I've got to the point now where I've had so many wrist injuries that probably 70% of the time, if I just place something in my wrist, I can just pop it back and carry on. Won't even need to brace it afterwards because the joints are so lax. Um, because of that, though, there are certain activities that are quite scary and potentially dangerous. And one of them is lifting saucepans. If I know I'm going to be picking up a heavy saucepan full of boiling water, and by heavy, I mean literally any saucepan, wrist braces is a sensible adaptation. The risk of deconditioning is much lower than the risk of me dropping a saucepan full of boiling water on myself and dislocating my wrist in the process. So, from a risk analysis perspective, what we're looking to do is to find the thing that's the biggest danger. Is it deconditioning or is it the risk of injury in other ways? And if it's the risk of injury in other ways, then splinting is the sensible option. It may mean that you end up having different variations of splints for different things. So wrist braces, I think I've got um, three pairs that are completely different that I've got left and right, and then I've got one that's really, really heavy immobilization for a recent injury on my left. Um, I use them all for different purposes, for different activities, for different things. And this is the other reason why orthotics is a good thing, because I don't want to be paying for all of those different options by myself. But you may find that there are some tasks where a splint, a very specific splint, makes a big difference. As an example, I've got a ring splint for the tip of my little finger, and I only wear it for knitting. That's it. I don't need it for any other activity, just knitting. So that kind of thing, what we're looking to do is for you to gain the skills you know to know what's the big risk here. And if the risk is injury, then preventing injury through splinting is sensible. I will just give an honourable mention to compression clothing because one of the major issues for a lot of hypermobile people is proprioceptive. So, proprioception is your ability to process where your own body is in relation to itself, but also in relation to your immediate environment. So, good proprioception allows you to walk through a door frame with no incidents. People with bad proprioception are more likely to walk into the door frame or get the door handle down their dressing gown sleeve or trip over their own feet or try to shut the door behind them and shut it on themselves or any other combination of ridiculous activities. Compression clothing greatly improves proprioception. And what it can also do is make you more aware of your body so that you start to spot injuries before they get too bad. So, what some of you may find is that if your proprioception is particularly bad and you start falling over, You don't really notice until you're already past the point where you can't save yourself. Like there's no rescuing that. Whereas if you've got better body awareness, you might notice that you've swayed to the side, correct that, and avoid falling over in the first place. So compression clothing is a really brilliant one. There are quite a few options for custom-made medical grade compression, all of which are available via NHS orthotics. So if that's something that you think might be beneficial for you, or if you're listening to this and thinking, oh, hang on, I'm injured all the time, maybe an orthotics referral is sensible. I would recommend you speak to your GP to accomplish that. Okay, let's have a little look. I'm lucky enough to have purchased a pair of Ossenberg closed cuff elbow crutches to replace my knackered NHS clicky painful pair. Congratulations, that is a big upgrade. So far, so good, despite the heavier weight. I'm wondering whether to add a pair of Flexifoot ferrules that I bought from them for extra shock absorption. Do you have any experience of these? And if so, would you recommend adding metal washers for the sticks to sit on, as they do not come with this particular ferrule? Otherwise, I may return them and keep the Ossenberg ferrules as they came fitted. Okay. Um, I do have Flexifoot ferrules on my smart crutches, actually, and I do quite like them. Partly for the shock absorption and partly for another feature, which is that if you are on uneven ground, a ferrule that's fixed, if your crutch goes down not completely at right angles to the ground, you don't have full contact. Whereas a ferrule with a little bit of flex in it, either Flexifoot or actually the Smart Crutch original ones are pretty good at this as well. And you can also get like angle adjustable ferrules. But basically, any ferrule, the little rubber bit on the end that has a little bit of a flex in it, ensures that if you are not completely like at right angles to the ground, you still get full contact from the base of your crutch to the floor. So they're a lot less likely to like slip out from underneath you, particularly if you are on uneven ground, or you're walking up slopes, or you are maybe on like muddy or icy or like gravelly kind of terrain. So the shock absorption is a really, really nice feature, but actually the increasing grip from a safety perspective is really, really good as well. Um, what you would possibly find is that a lot of mobility showrooms actually the places that sell replacement ferrules, so a lot of like mobility places, if you put in your postcode and then mobility showroom, you should be able to find one. They can actually swap them over for you because it is a bit of a fight getting them off the crutches. So it would potentially be worth going to a mobility showroom and getting them to swap them for you. And then you can try them there and see if you prefer them. And if you don't, swap them back. In terms of like the washer on the inside thing, if they didn't come with them, they probably don't need them. But if that's something that your current crutches have, it might be worth doing. But you could probably, I would recommend maybe emailing the Flexifoot people and asking if that's how you're supposed to fit them, because I'm not actually sure about that as a feature. But yeah, definitely mobility showrooms, they'll have somebody who will have like got the knack of taking the bits off the ends. So um, I would definitely recommend that as a way to try and get some help there. Because I think it's quite sensible. But the Flexifoot ones I do like. Um, yeah, I think that would be a good combination. Good combination. Yeah. I hope it works for you. Best of luck with that. Um, If you are using crutches or you're a stick user as well, one feature I would like to point out, because it's winter and it's miserable here, is you can actually get mud and ice grips specifically for crutches. So these actually look like tiny crampons, but for walking sticks. So what you do is screw the kind of plate bit round the bottom of the crutch, and then there's a little kind of don't have to mime this short of going to get one. Basically, there's like a little fold down bit with a spiky thing on the bottom made of metal, but it also folds back up again. So if you're on muddy, uneven ground, and then you're going from muddy ground to in your house, having the muddy, spiky bit down is a really good way to increase how much grip you've got, particularly on ice, but also really slick, muddy areas. And then when you get to a building or a pavement or an area that's much safer, you can just fold it up out of the way. Um, I've I bought mine many years ago on eBay, actually, but you can get them on a lot of online mobility stockists. So if you have a look at crutch or walking stick ice grips, if you're using mobility aids in this miserable kind of wintry weather, or if you're a particularly outsidey kind of person, I think they're a good investment. They do work sort of okay with the Flexifoot ones, not as well. Um, but yeah, they're a good little feature if you happen to be using crutches and are worried about falling over. Okay. Um, if either of you, like people who've had your questions answered, have got follow-up questions, please do just stick them in the chat. I'm quite happy to have a little, chat about that. Or if you've got anything else you'd like to talk about. Well, it's quite quiet tonight, isn't it? Okay. Minimal questions so far. What? Oh, okay. My GP referred me to pain clinic as I've had a nightmare with pain meds. I seem to get all the side effects, but no benefits to pain. Okay, that sucks. I've tried amitriptyline, which knocked me out, even at a low dose, and taking it earlier in the evening. Duloxetine, I had an allergic reaction to. Pregabalin is having no impact on my upper and mid back pain. Um, Pregabalin is messing up cognition. Doctor I saw at the pain clinic basically complained about EDS diagnoses and just said keep taking the pregabalin even though it's not helping at all. I'm struggling with side effects. Do I just give up on pain meds and assume I'm sensitive to pain medication at this point? I'm at a loss and my back pain is reaching 10 out of 10 multiple points in the day. Okay, that's a really naff situation, and I'm really sorry you're going through that. Also, the pain clinic people, that's not appropriate behavior at all. I would absolutely be lodging a complaint. Um, it's not for them to question your diagnosis in any way, and making you feel like you're not being listened to is not acceptable. Um, you are fully entitled to a second opinion, in any situation, any medical setting, for any reason. So what I would say is, if you're not happy with what the pain clinic have said, I would ask for a second opinion, with a different clinician. Um, it is difficult. There's a lot of stuff around pain medication specifically. If you're on the kind of spectrum, so mast cell activation syndrome is a common complication for hypermobile people. A lot of us actually don't have a diagnosis of MCAS as such, but do definitely have weird allergic type reactions to stuff. Um, what you may find is that you are prone to having reactions to things, and you do get a lot of the side effects because of the MCAS side of things. So, yes, it might be a possibility that you struggle with pain meds for that reason, but I don't think you're there yet. Off the top of my head, I can think of three drugs you haven't mentioned there, that are anti-neuropathic type meds. And that's just before we start getting really, really creative with miniature doses of multiple things rather than a full dose of only one thing. Um, so I do think going back to pain clinic would be a sensible idea. As an example, amitriptyline for a lot of people does cause the kind of second day zombie feelings. Nortriptyline is a very, very similar drug, but doesn't seem to be quite so bad for drowsiness. Um, I have a sneaking suspicion it's probably more expensive because it's often prescribed after you've tried and failed with amitriptyline. Um, Not that I'm a skeptic or anything. Um, so that might be something, I obviously prescribing medication is well outside my remit, but as a hypermobile person, I've taken a lot of medications for my own pain. Um, I definitely found I got less drowsy on nortriptyline versus amitriptyline. I do get really, really wild, super vivid dreams as a side effect, but as far as side effects goes, that's not terrible. The other thing to work on would actually be, from an MCASI allergic perspective, there's something called the histamine bucket theory. So the histamine bucket, basically, if you imagine that every time your body produces histamine, it goes into a big bucket in your body. Histamine is a normal part of a bodily process to do with like the lymphatic system and injuries and allergies, all kinds of stuff like that. So it is normal to produce histamine in response to everyday stimuli type situations. The theory goes that certain groups of people, as an example, us hypermobile folks, don't get rid of histamine as effectively as we should. So what happens is your body kind of accumulates quite a lot of it in this little imaginary bucket. If your histamine levels are really, really high, you are more likely to be reactive to a whole heck of a lot of different things. If you can empty your histamine bucket, you're more likely to not react to things. Your body will just kind of be okay with it, sort of. So, for a lot of people, as an example, if you have one allergic reaction, you can be more reactive for months or even years afterwards. So, I had a reaction to morphine as a teenager. It was nearly a decade before I could eat poppy seeds in bread without some kind of reaction. Now it's absolutely fine. So often it's actually the fact that your histamine bucket is so full and you need to get that sorted, and then you might tolerate other things a lot better. So it may be that the reason you're getting so many of these side effects is that your body is just really kind of histamine packed and overloaded and sensitized. Um, Mast cell action. The charity have a lot of great advice on their website about managing mast cell type issues. Some of the things, actually, I was just that came up in one of the student chats earlier when I was talking to my whole team. Um, was it then? No, it might have been a patient. I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today about this, but essentially, climate change is also making allergies worse. So, because of changes in weather, we tend to have less regular rain. We'll have like big blocks of rain and then big blocks of drought. And because of that, when you have a big block of not rain, you get quite a lot of air pollution build up. The increases in warm, wet weather, which are perfect for plants, not so great if you want to mow the lawn or go outside, basically mean that a lot of plants now have a longer flowering season. So pollen levels are way, way higher than they used to be. And the pollen season for specific allergens is also longer. So if you are very specifically allergic to, I don't know, May blossom, as an example, it used to be that May blossom was very specifically isolated almost exactly to just May. Now you'll get some a month before and some a month after. So you're getting like 3 months of May blossom rather than one because the season's kind of stretched out a bit. Um, all of this is basically just saying that we're going to have to work increasingly hard to keep our histamine buckets empty so that we don't become ridiculously reactive to stuff. Some of the things you can do for that include things like actually just washing your hands, your face, changing your shirt when you get in, so you're taking off all your environmental allergen stuff, and then cleaning yourself back and putting on fresh clothes. Um, Things like air filtration systems, things like masking in public can sometimes help. Taking antihistamines regularly rather than on an as needed basis can be really helpful as well. And there are also a group of drugs called mast cell stabilizers. So, mast cell stabilizers basically stop your body from overreacting and producing a buttload of histamine for no reason whatsoever. Or like a flower looked at you or something and your whole body went. Um, so, if you can get your mast cells to kind of calm down and your histamine bucket empty, you may find that you are just generally speaking way less reactive to a whole heck of a lot of things, and you tolerate changes to your treatment a lot better. And that would hopefully stand you in a better position for trying new medications without it causing a problem. Um, the only other thing that's sometimes worth mentioning, so there's a supplement called quercetin. And there is some research to indicate that quercetin has a mast cell stabilizing effect. But quercetin, the chemical compound, when found in foods, is found in things like apple and like nuts and that kind of thing, which themselves are major allergens. So it's a little bit of a hit and miss thing. Some people think it's brilliant, other people don't tolerate it in the first place. So I don't tolerate the foods that have quercetin in them naturally occurring, but I do tolerate the supplements. Obviously, I cannot advise you all to take supplements, but I can point out that there is research about mast cell stabilizing qualities for quercetin. If you choose to read that research and act upon it, do so at your discretion. I would recommend speaking to your GPs. before making major changes though. Um, but yeah, so that kind of thing might be useful. Um, in addition to the kind of basic stuff, and I can already see another question coming up about tens actually, so I'm going to jump in on that as well and kind of mash these together. Tens machines are one of my favorite pain management strategies for back pain specifically. They are wearable, they're drug-free, you're highly unlikely to react to them. And you can use it for hours or even days at a time as long as you move the electrodes every once in a while. You're not supposed to sleep in tens. I think it's mostly because if you roll over weirdly in the night, the electrodes that was on your lower back might end up stuck to your butt and you'll wake up having electrocuted yourself in the bum at 2 in the morning. Not that I'm speaking from experience, but if you are going to use tens for sleeping, try to get a tens machine where you can set it so that it basically like runs for half an hour and then turns off automatically. So that's quite a common feature on a lot of the digital ones. I'm old school. I like the analog ones, tens wise, because I think they're a bit more adjustable. But some of the analog ones have that feature as well. So tens is something I would definitely recommend, but also maybe having a look at compression clothing, kinesiology tapes as well, because a lot of these things, heat, ice, microwavable hot water bottles are a thing, and they are so much easier to use than having to pour a kettle of boiling water into a hot water bottle. Just stick it in the microwave for like 2 minutes and you're good to go. Much, much easier, much safer. You can also get like wheat bags, that kind of thing. I think a lot of the time we kind of forget about the basics of pain management. So, like heat, ice, compression, elevate, that kind of thing. But actually, stacking a lot of that stuff on top of your medication, on top of your kind of hardcore strategies, really kind of doubles down on the effectiveness. So, what you're looking to do is, at the very least, distract yourself from how unpleasant the pain is. But if we overload our systems with positive sensations, with things that feel good, and equally we're getting a load of dopamine from doing activities that we enjoy, it can really, really help with the chronic pain side of things by just drowning it out. Essentially, we're looking to drown out the bad feels with good feels. In a slightly more, it's a bit more technical than that, really, but you get the idea. So, hopefully, some of that helps a little bit. Um, Okay, let me have a little look. Can I recommend specific models of elbow crutches that are easy to fold and take on trips? Also, that they are a reasonable price. Thank you. Um, in short, no, I don't know of any folding models. However, most crutches that are height adjustable, if you push the pin in and then just collapse them as short as they'll go, you end up taking up like half the space. So it may be that regular crutches that are height adjustable that you can just shrink down as small as possible does the job. I think I did come across a folding set once. My concern with folding things, and it's the same issue for folding wheelchairs, is that every single moving part, which a fold is a moving part, you lose stability. So you're losing some of that kind of the support, and you're getting a little bit more wobble introduced into the system. So with folding wheelchairs versus rigid frame wheelchairs, what it means is that your some of your effort that goes into moving it is lost, and the same is true for crutches. So stability wise, having a fold in there means that you're introducing another kind of wobbly area, and you do have to kind of compensate for that when using the equipment. For most people, that level of compensation is negligible, like it barely makes a difference. However, hypermobile people have a really low tolerance for pretty much everything. Not like emotionally in a kind of like character flaw kind of way, but physiologically, we don't cope well with changes or losses of efficiency, or any kind of like other variables being chucked into the mix. Like if there's a way that it can go wrong for you as a hypermobile person, it probably will in some small capacity. So it's the same issue I have with folding walking sticks. They are a good compromise option if it's an aid that you don't need all of the time. But every single moving part, every folding bit there, you lose a bit of efficiency and you get a little bit more wobble. And that little bit more wobble means that you have to put a little bit more effort in to stay stable. And that's more likely to tip you over into a little bit of a flare up. It's going to limit how much you can use that aid at kind of peak efficiency, if that makes any sense at all. Um, in terms of things that you can take on trips, it's worth, if you're thinking about like flying or trains or anything like that, um, I would probably recommend just use the aid as you travel. And then when you're at your destination, you can leave it at the hotel or the campsite or the whatever if you're not using it. Quite often, mobility equipment is not counted in your like baggage allowance, like it's a separate thing. So I've gone on holiday, I've flown with my wheelchair. My wheelchair was not part of my baggage allowance. It was a separate item that I took with me. I just had to let them know I was taking it. So I hope that maybe helps a little bit. Um, but yeah, I think just collapsing regular crutches down as far as they'll go is probably your best bet. In terms of like transportation for that, um, the rucksacks you can get that are designed to hold walking poles, you can sometimes get them to hold crutches if they're collapsed short enough. And I know that because I did it on a mountain bike a couple of weeks ago. I did look a little bit like a Ninja Turtle because I had like a crutch poking out over one shoulder mounted on a rucksack. But other than the looking like a Ninja Turtle thing, it actually did work quite well. So just collapsing them down is a good thing. Um, or what you can do is essentially just create like a sling system that goes around it. So removable bag straps, you can just attach them to the crutch and then like wear it over your shoulder if you need to. But generally, if you're traveling, I would recommend using your aid to do the traveling, because that's probably the most efficient way to get them there. I hope that sort of helps. Okay. What are your favorite ways to help pain other than TENS? I love my TENS machine, but need to work on other solutions too. So, one of the things I would encourage you to do in terms of pain management is try and work out why it hurts. You will not always be able to do this. Sometimes you just feel pants and there is no rhyme or reason why. However, there are going to be some situations where working out the cause of the pain can help you manage it more effectively. So, as an example, I am particularly sensitive to changes in barometric pressure. So, air pressure drops before storms. As soon as the air pressure drops below 1,000 HPA, I will get a pain flare up. I just will every single time because the loss of pressure is the main cause of my pain. Adding strategies that increase pressure are really effective for pain management. So, compression leggings, getting in a bath full of salt water, weighted blankets, um, having people's pets just lay on top of me, things like that work really, really well. Tubie grip, even kinesiology tape, all that kind of stuff. However, if the pain is not because of barometric pressure change, those strategies for me become a lot less effective. So, if I'm looking at acute injury pain, I vastly prefer ice to heat, as an example. I just think it seems to really help with like getting the swelling down. Compression and elevation work well for that as well. There will be some things where gradual movement can be really beneficial. So, like muscle tension, particularly like coat hanger, neck and back pain from being on the computer for too long or being at a desk for too long. Movement is your best friend there. Really, really gentle stretches, but regular movement and getting proactive with it is really effective too. So, don't wait until you're in pain to do something about it. Start being a bit more fidgety, move more, set yourself timers. If I'm watching TV, every time I get an advert for this program is sponsored by, I will just take 30 seconds to like have a bit of a fidget, check in with myself, see if I feel okay, have a sippy drink, and then I'll go back to work or whatever I'm doing. TV, emails, etc. Um, this kind of approach, I think, is the most effective way. What you're looking to do is to have as many different pain management options as you can find. Heat, ice, TENS, topical stuff for massaging can be quite nice. Hot baths, even just foot soaks. Um, hot water bottles are quite a good one. Compression clothing, weighted blankets. Um, any activity that really increases all like your happy neurotransmitters, so your dopamines, your serotonins, that kind of thing, Anything that you really love or enjoy that's also a distraction is brilliant. So TV, reading, audiobooks, arts and crafts are all brilliant pain management strategies. All of that kind of stuff. And then start learning how your body responds to different things in different situations. So it may be that there are some kinds of pain where your best bet is to just try and like tune out from that as much as possible. At which point, listening to an audiobook while watching TV, whilst doing arts and crafts, while somebody talks to you, is going to be brilliant because 100% of your brain power is totally focused on activities now. Whereas if you're midway through a migraine and somebody gives you that amount of sensory input, you're probably going to either throw up on them or want to smother them with a pillow or both. So working out what it is that's going on allows you to tailor your pain management approach. Um, I do offer a flare-up planning service actually. So actually, one of the things I do with people, and I would encourage you all to do this, whether it's with me or just on your own, is to look at how you're currently managing flare-ups and different types of flare-ups. So I know that if there's a thunderstorm coming, I'm going to need to go with compression. I'm going to need to reduce my distractions so I can focus a bit better. I'm going to need weighted blankets and I'm going to need electrolytes and salt to kind of keep my blood pressure up, that kind of thing. In the summer, I need to be in thigh-high compression stockings and I need to be as cool as possible in those situations as well. But having all of that stuff written down allows me to not have to remember all of that, particularly if brain fog is a big issue. So if you know you are unreliable when you're at your worst, have it written down and stuck to the fridge and just look at the fridge and go, okay, this is the specific kind of terrible I feel. Here are the 5 strategies I'm supposed to implement. And then you just follow instructions. This is something that you can adapt over time. So it may be that actually seasonal coping strategies are really important. A lot of my coping strategies in summer are geared towards POTS management, whereas a lot of the ones in winter are geared towards staying warm and managing pain. So it does vary a lot for people, and it will also vary depending on whether you're at home, whether you're traveling, whether you're at work as well. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful, maybe. Okay. Sentences we were expected to hear today. Sorry. Okay, let's have a little look. So many questions. Okay. Any advice on pillow or neck support for sleep would be great. I really, really, really wish I could just say, this is the pillow that suits all hypermobile people. Buy this and you'll be fine. It's not how it works. My best, best, best advice is to go somewhere that sells a lot of pillows, set aside a good 3 or 4 hours of your life, and lay on them all. And you lay on them all for a minimum of 20 minutes and test it. Quite often, there will be things that feel comfortable at first, but the longer you sit with that, the less you like it. So just like a quick, oh, that feels okay, isn't going to do the job. You want to be able to go somewhere with a bed that's similar to your bed and lay on a pillow for 20 minutes. A lot of places, if you explain that you actually have a lot of chronic health issues and you're really struggling to get comfortable, are okay with you laying on demonstration beds. They'll just let you do it. Um, I know this because I was once in Dunelm with my mum and they literally just let me lay on a display of memory foam pillows for like 20 minutes while mum did the rest of her shopping. It was great. And I did buy a pillow at the end of it. So, um, but yeah, generally just trying them is the way to go. You sometimes get a vaguely good idea. So if you surveyed 20 hypermobile people and 18 of them liked a pillow, chances are pretty good that it will be okay for you. But some things I would keep in mind are how you want to sleep on it and your shoulder and neck anatomy. So I was a rock climbing instructor in my teens. I've been a gymnast, a dancer. I quite like swimming and I quite played wheelchair basketball at uni. So I've got quite broad shoulders and I've got quite a lot of muscle mass in my upper back and stuff as well. So I like quite a deep pillow or like 2 pillows on top of each other because I want a lot of support here when I sleep on my side. My mum, who is symptom-wise pretty similar to me, has quite sloping shoulders and is a lot more narrow in the shoulders than I am. She thinks all of my pillow choices are horrendous, and I think all of hers are horrendous. We cannot share pillows. This is just not compatible. So what I would look at if you're sleeping on your side is here, are you tilting your head to the side because you've got too much pillow? Are you slumping down to the side because you haven't got enough pillow? Take photos of yourself laying in bed and look at those photos and try to understand whether that looks like a good position or whether it looks like you're turning yourself into a human pretzel and you're going to be really uncomfortable. Um, Sometimes things like actually having a pillow in your armpit can be really useful, or having a pillow behind you and like rolling back onto it a little bit so that you're not laying completely on your side. I think absolutely everyone should be sleeping with a pillow between their knees. Just it's essential if you're a side sleeper. So if you're a side sleeper and your pelvis, so like if you're standing up, these are your legs. If you're laying down, your body doesn't stay that way with your feet hip width apart. Your top leg drops down, which actually can put a little bit of strain on your hip and your lower back and do weird things with your posture. So popping a pillow in there that keeps your legs parallel can really, really help with pelvic and low back pain. Um, Absolutely everyone, pillow between your knees. Even non-hypermobile people should be doing this, I think, personally. If you then roll onto your back, what you can do is just rotate that pillow and have it under your knees. So you're getting a little bit of like elevation at the knee, and then your feet drop down to the mattress again. And what that does is just kind of tilt your pelvis ever so slightly to take the strain off your lower back. Um, so that's generally quite comfortable, and it's surprising how much of a difference leg support can make to upper body pain. So actually, if you're getting like upper body, shoulder, scapular, neck pain, sometimes changing the way your pelvis sits can make a big difference. So I would try adding a pillow between your knees. What I tend to do is have pillow for my head, and then when that gets a little bit sad and I replace that one, the head pillow that's coming out of circulation becomes my between the knee pillow. And then after that, they'll get like downgraded to office pillow rather than bed pillow. So, it kind of works as a transition process, but I hope that's a little bit helpful. But genuinely, just go and try as many as you can. Um, I think that's the best I can recommend, really. Um, Is there anything you suggest for arm and back pain for things like driving, washing hair, computer? All aggravates my pain so much and causes times where I just can't do anything. Um, oh, that's difficult. I'm sorry you're having a rough time with it. The first thing I'm going to talk about is pacing. And I know you're probably all sick of hearing me talk about pacing if you've been to even one of these before. But genuinely, pacing for pain is not a topic that's talked about enough. We think of pacing as being like a fatigue management strategy, and it's not just that simple. So, um, if you are doing an activity and you're sat there and you're going, oh, I think I've done just about enough of this, I'm starting to get some pain, that's too much already. So if you can do, say, 10 minutes of computer work before you start getting back pain, you should be doing something about that at 8 minutes. Ideally 7 minutes, but eight is the kind of cut-off thing. So what you're looking to do is to understand vaguely what your tolerance is for some kind of activity, and then not pushing too far beyond that. And it may seem like, oh, well, if I can only ever do 8 minutes of computer work, I'm never going to get anything done. But 8 minutes, 2 minute fidget break, and another 8 minutes is more time than if you'd done 10 minutes and then not been able to do any more. So pacing is an efficiency tool. Taking breaks regularly, but little breaks is going to be your best advice there. Have a look at the pain management things we've just talked about already in this episode, but I would also really strongly consider seeing physiotherapy and orthotics if you haven't already. Splinting and bracing for pain management and injury avoidance is sensible. And if you're not currently under physio, and this goes for pretty much all of you, if you don't have a physio routine right now, please go and get one from somebody. Find yourself some kind of physio who can give you some advice, because being as strong as possible is your best defense against having ligaments that are made of chewing gum and determination. It just is. You need good muscle strength, but you also need to learn to know when you need to take a little bit of a break, when you need to stop and have a stretch, have a little bit of fidget, get some of the tension out, that sort of thing. If you fast forward through videos of me doing live stream, you'll see is that I'll sometimes sit down and sometimes sit up and I'll fidget and take drinks. I'm at the point now, after having taught this for nearly 10 years, where I do these things automatically. So pacing for me now, for the most part, is completely instinctual because I've trained myself to do it. To start with, you're going to have to remind yourself constantly, take a break, fidget, change your position, swap between doing computer work and a little bit of something standing up. So I might do a couple of emails and then go and wash up the mugs, and that will do it. And then I might go back and do a few more emails, or I might do an appointment, and then I might go and load the top shelf of the dishwasher, and then that's it. So you'll get it all done eventually, but chopping and changing between things can be a really effective way to just vary up what you're doing, and to stop that kind of overdoing it irritation that goes along with pain. Um, Anything where you are doing it with your hands above your head a lot. So hair washing is something I like talk to a lot of people about. This is particularly a POTS trigger as well. So having your hands up above your head a lot for a lot of people will aggravate POTS symptoms. So learning to do that one hand at a time can be helpful. So I will shampoo half of my head and then I will swap and I'll shampoo the other half. And then I'll lay down in the bath and rinse. Um, my hair will get washed eventually, but only having one arm up means that I can either support my first arm with the other arm, which means that I'm using less muscle strength and it aggravates my shoulders less, or I can just rest one side and then the other. So sometimes it's about like looking at strategies for, how can you modify that? Can you break it up into smaller pieces? Can you do it with aids or assistance, that kind of thing? Um, if you're at the point where most of your life just feels like it's way too difficult, see an occupational therapist. We're good at this. We like to problem solve. Um, yeah, hopefully that's a little bit of help, maybe. Okay, well, yeah. Lovely. Scrolling down. Oh, thank you very much. I too think my pacing masterclass is amazing. Uh, okay. Yeah, it's an interesting point, actually, I think, Ferry, for time blindness with activities, particularly for the ADHD crew who are prone to hyperfocus. In the OT world, we do something called activity analysis, and it's basically looking at the entirety of an activity and breaking it down to a kind of a recipe. So, what steps are involved in it, and also what processes and what bodily functions are involved in it. So, um, kind of how you used to write up science experiments at school, where you have like your equipment list and then your method and then the steps for your experiment. It's basically that, but for everyday activities. So when you've started to get into the habit of doing that, it allows you to look at an activity that you previously thought of as just one block of task and break it into smaller steps. So, as an example, even if you know there's a 70-80% chance you're going to start this thing and then fall straight into a hyperfocus and 4 hours will pass before you snap out of it, set the activity up and then stop. And then you're going to get a drink, you're going to eat something, you're going to go to the loo, you're going to do some gentle stretching, you're going to sort your pain medication out. When you are in the best possible physical condition, then you can start your activity. And if you do happen to get sucked down some kind of activity rabbit hole, you are at least going to survive it better than you would have done without the prep. After you snap out of your hyperfocus, stop, go for a walk, move, do something different, have a little lay down, grab a drink, pee, have a break. And when you feel better, come back and then you can put things away. So the absolute minimum we should be breaking tasks down is into three. Set up, do the thing, pack away. Ideally, you're going to start breaking things up more. But what happens when you start breaking things up is you start realizing that we actually don't need to group tasks the way that we would instinctively do them based on, I guess, social conditioning. So I don't clean a room ever. My cleaner does, but I don't. So she'll come and like reset us every once in a while and get me back to clean and shiny. But for maintenance purposes with cleaning, I won't ever go in and go, I'm going to clean the bathroom. What I will do is bits of cleaning throughout the day. So if I've just been to the toilet, while I'm there, I might also clean the toilet bowl. Or if I'm washing my hands, I might also clean the sink. Or if I'm fixing my hair in a mirror, I might also clean the mirror. One thing. So go to the bathroom, do one cleany thing, and then leave. That's it. When you get into the habit of doing this, you'll find that what you manage to do is mostly maintain things without specifically having to wear yourself out doing the whole massive bathroom clean or the whole kitchen clean. And it allows you to break things up much more effectively, and you're more likely to stay on top of things if each individual section involved in that process is easier to do. So another example might be things like bed sheets. Almost never do I strip the entire bed, not just because my husband is responsible for laundry, because I just put it in the machine and then immediately forget about it. He does laundry. He's good at it. I'm quite happy to offload. But in terms of like bed sheets, as an example, we've got multiple sets of sheets that all coordinate with each other. And the reason for that is that the full strip everything, wash everything, get the bed made thing is a guaranteed flare up trigger for me. It's too much. And more often than not, when we used to do it that way, we'd try and make the bed together and I'd get halfway through putting the fitted sheet on. And I would look at the duvet and just want to cry because putting the duvet cover back on was just too much. So what we do now is change the sheets in sections. And I've actually added a flat sheet that goes between our bodies and the duvet. So if the duvet isn't actually touching any part of us, we don't need to wash it as often. It stays cleaner. So the flat sheet and the pillowcases get swapped out together. And then the fitted sheet gets swapped out and done separately. And then the duvet cover gets swapped out. So it might take us 3 or 4 weeks, sometimes longer, to get all of the sheets swapped out. But at no point during that have I ever had to completely exhaust myself and ruin my lower back changing all of the sheets at once. And also at no point does the entire bed feel super gross. So flat sheet and pillowcases go together, and then we'll put the spares on. All of them are kind of coordinating colours and it all kind of matches, so we get away with it really, really well. And realistically, the only people in my bedroom are myself and the occasional paramedic and my husband. So what does it matter? Um, but yeah, that kind of approach to just breaking things into chunks and then doing little bits of things is generally a lot more pacing friendly, and a lot more exhaustion friendly. And it's a really, really good way for those of us who maybe struggle with like low motivation when we're in a lot of pain. Motivating myself to change the entire bed sheets on a bad day, it's not going to happen. Motivating myself to change one pillowcase, much more achievable. So giving yourself an easier job to do, but also making it more accessible is definitely a good thing to try. Okay. Well, let me just double check the chat to make sure I've caught all of the questions. And then I think we are pretty much done for tonight. It's worked out quite well. Pain relief, lever clinic for medical cannabis. Brilliant. I actually know quite a few people, quite a few of my patients are now using medical cannabis for EDS pain, which is brilliant. And I also know a lot of people, myself included, who use CBD intermittently as well. One thing I will just say is if you're going via a clinic, this will be covered in your consultation. If you're just buying CBD yourself, as an example, please, please, please be aware that cannabis taken orally or as edibles or anything like that has a really, really high chance of interacting with a whole heck of a lot of different medications. So any medication that comes with a grapefruit warning, as in you should not be taking this medication with grapefruit, you also should not be taking with cannabis products of any kind. And that includes things like hemp tea. So What happens with that is basically your body uses the same very niche enzyme to process the drug, as in your prescribed medication, and the cannabis. Um, if you use up all of this enzyme on one or the other before you've had a chance for your body to make more, what can actually happen is that you haven't burnt through the whole of your medication dose when you take the next dose. So, what effectively happens if you have a lot of cannabis in your system or a lot of grapefruit in your system when you take your medication is that on your second dose of the day or the hour or the whatever, you accidentally overdose. I learned this the hard way because I'd forgotten there was pineapple in lilt, not pineapple, grapefruit in lilt. So I had a can of lilt with domperidone, a medication that's designed to speed up digestive transit. And I learned the hard way that you do not want to overdose on medications that speed up digestive transit. So this it wasn't the worst one. It wasn't opiates. It wasn't any of my heart rate medication, as an example. Um, but it was unpleasant. But for things like PARTS medications, as an example, beta blockers, most beta blockers you can't take at the same time as cannabis. Now, topical cannabis or inhaled, so like vapes or atomizery things, or even smoking it, is a different process. It uses different enzymes and different bodily functions to do that. But we're just talking about things that have the same route through your body. So basically, if you're eating it or you're putting it under your tongue, you shouldn't also be having like food and drinks with grapefruit in. Um, and you shouldn't be mixing that with medications. So, um, for all medication, the general advice for CBD products and for cannabis products is a 2 hour gap between like things with the same kind of route through your body. For anything, if you're taking medications with a grapefruit warning, it's 4 whole hours. So if I have propranolol at midday, for 4 hours either side of that, I can't have like CBD teas or, you know, under the tongue liquids or anything like that. The difficulty a lot of people have is that a lot of the medications that are problematic medications are also taken multiple times per day. So please, please, please do share with your doctor if you are using CBD, just because it means that when they're prescribing other things, you might need to be extra careful, or you might need to change the times of day that you're using various products. So, yeah, be honest with your GPs. Like if you're using that, whether you're using it legally or otherwise, please just inform somebody whenever they're prescribing medication for you. They need to know what else you're taking. Um, but as far as pain management goes, I know quite a few people who've had amazing successes and huge improvements in quality of life with medical cannabis. Um, the only downside for a lot of people is the price. So be forewarned, but it is definitely something that I'm a huge advocate for because I think it's life-changing for a lot of people. It's really, really brilliant. Okay, have I got all of the questions? Yeah, I think we're there. Okay. Mm, mm, mm. Brilliant. Oh, fabulous. Okay. Um, Thank you all very much for coming. It's been a really great evening, actually. Some really interesting questions in there. I really hope it's been helpful. Please do come back next month. I do occasionally have special guests when I manage to bully some of the medical advisory team into coming. So if there is a specialism or an area of practice you're particularly interested in, please do let us know. Please do give us feedback so that I can pester people into coming on here to share their advice with you. I hope it's been really, really useful. Third Thursday of every month, 7 p.m. UK time. Please do come again, spread the word. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your evenings. Bye.